Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of Jesus' own resurrection. And we are still in Luke's Gospel. We have that long, wonderful passage today about Jesus walking on the road to Emmaus with the two disciples and their encounter with Jesus on the road to Emmaus. So let's just go ahead and read this. This is Luke chapter 24, and it's verses 13 through 35. And behold, two of them were going that very day to a village named Emmaus, which was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Not necessarily an easy walk, probably about a 4 hour walk, 3 or 4 hour walk. And they were conversing with each other about all these things which had taken place. And it came about while they were conversing and discussing that Jesus himself approached and began traveling with them, but their eyes were prevented from recognizing him as Jesus. Why? And he said to them, "What are these words that you are exchanging with one another as you are walking?" And they stood still. I love that. They stopped right there in the road, looking sad. And one of them, named Cleopas, answered and said to him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem, unaware of the things which have happened these last days?" And Jesus said to them, "What things?" And they said to him, "The truth about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word in the sight of God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him up to the sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, besides all this, it's the third day since these things happened, and also some of our women among us amazed us. When they were at the tomb early in the morning, they didn't find his body. They came saying that they had seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. And some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just exactly as the women had also said, but him they did not see. He said to them, "O foolish men, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things, and thus to enter into his glory?" And beginning with Moses and with all the prophets, he explained to them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. And as they approached the village where they were going, he acted as though he would go further. And they urged him, saying, "No, stay with us, for it is getting toward evening, and the day is now nearly over." And he went in to stay with them. And it came about when he had reclined at table with them, that he took bread and blessed it, and breaking it, he began giving it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished out of their sight. And they said to one another, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was speaking to us on the road, while he was explaining the scriptures to us?" And they arose that very hour and returned to Jerusalem, and found gathered together the 11 and those who were with them, saying, "The Lord has really risen. He's appeared to Simon." And they began to relate their experiences on the road and how he was recognized by them in the breaking of the bread. Wow, there's so much here, and there's so many amazing things to think about, and some questions about how did this happen? Um, they're on the road to Emmaus, about 7 miles. They're going, I believe they're going south. Anyway, and so they're walking, and Jesus walks up and starts to travel with them, and wants to know what they're talking about, and they stop, and they're just downcast. And Cleopas is the name of one of them. Let's not forget one of them is named. We don't know who the other one is. And he says, "Are you the only visitor at Jerusalem?" A lot of people are going home from the Passover. Some are going to stay all the way to Pentecost, especially those who have traveled around the empire. They're going to stay the whole 7 weeks and be there for Pentecost too. But those who are locals, they're all headed home. And so it's not unusual that they'd meet another traveler. And they ask him, "Are you the only person that was there that doesn't know what happened?" And Jesus said, "What things?" And then they call Jesus everything but the Messiah. They don't use that word. He was a prophet. He was mighty in word and deed from God and in front of all the people. And some of us were hoping he might be the one to redeem Israel. But they don't say the word Messiah. Jesus does. They also talk about the empty tomb. They were there long enough to know. They were with the group of believers when the women came from the tomb and said the tomb is empty. They were there long enough to know that Peter went and came back and that he found it empty too. And then they left. And that's when Jesus joined them. The first thing that Jesus says is, don't you get this? This is what it had to be for the Messiah to accomplish the things that the prophets have said. Jesus uses the word Christ, the word Messiah, right off the bat. We, yes, are talking about the Messiah, and he was the Messiah, and I'll prove to you he's the Messiah. And for the next several hours, walking from Jerusalem to Emmaus, Jesus starts in with Moses, starts in with the Pentateuch, and starts preaching himself and explaining all the prophets. We know that he could have gone to Psalm 22 and to Isaiah 40 through 56 and to Jeremiah 31 through 33 to so many places throughout the prophets, um, and explain to them over and over again, yes, it says this, and this. Yes, he was born in Bethlehem, just like it says in Malachi. Yes, he was offered up like a lamb dumb before his shearers, just like it says in Isaiah. And then they're not permitted to see who he is. And I think, this is my opinion, I think that's because at that point they're listening. They're not overjoyed that they see Jesus. And if he teaches them as Jesus in this moment, they're not going to listen to him. They're going to be overjoyed by the fact that he is Jesus. They don't know that he's Jesus for the whole trip. And I think that allows Jesus to have their full attention and to reveal the scriptures to them, to explain the scriptures to them. And so then they have this moment. There's so many moments in the resurrection that bring our minds to the communion service that we have every Lord's Day. At the end of John's Gospel, we have breakfast on the beach and the breaking of bread. We even have it sort of in the feeding of the 5,000, but we certainly have it here with Jesus breaking the bread, handing it to them, and then appearing to them, have an experience of the risen Lord and the breaking of bread, and then he vanishes. Now they've had a corporeal experience of Jesus, but he vanishes before their eyes. Is this something the Spirit is accomplishing or something that has to do with the nature of his resurrection body? Don't know. But he vanishes. And even though it's getting dark, they have to walk the 4 hours back. By the time they get back, it's going to be late at night, maybe the middle of the night. They go to the upper room where they are all gathered, and they say, the first thing they say to them when they burst in the door, before they can tell their story, is, he really is risen. The apostles tell them, he really is risen. He appeared to Peter. Paul is the only one besides Luke who mentions this individual meeting, Jesus and Simon, or Jesus and Cephas, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15. But it's there, and they blurt it out. And then Cleopas and his friend blurt, oh, yeah, we saw him too. We saw him. And they explain about how they realized it was Jesus in the breaking of the bread, not at the breaking of the bread, but in the breaking of the bread. It takes us right to the communion service when they say it that way. Okay, we're going to pick up with verse 36 next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.